Hey, good morning, everyone. I am not Miriam. I am Ben Silver. I'm a community lawyer with Citizen Advocacy Center. I've got about 10 minutes here. I want to spend maybe 5 to 7 explaining a little bit what Citizen Advocacy Center does, and then I will leave a little bit of time if you have any questions, or I can share a story at that point. So Citizen Advocacy Center is a nonpartisan, nonprofit community legal organization. So we don't support any candidates or parties. Our job is neutral, and it's to inform the public about their rights as citizens, as residents in Illinois. That can range anything from their participatory rights, how they can participate in government, their voting rights, how anything in their government works. So we do that through a number of different outlets. One, we do a lot of civic education. That can mean coming to a school like this. It can mean educating your teachers. We often do professional conferences with your teachers. And it can also mean members of the public coming to us to try and find out how something works. So we operate through a number of different laws, but the main ones that we work with a lot are called the Freedom of Information Act, the Open Meetings Act, and one you've probably heard more about, the First Amendment, your free speech rights. I want to go through a little bit about what each one of those does, in case you ever want to use them, and you can of course find out more information from us if you do. The first one of those is the Freedom of Information Act. So what that law says is that information that the government has, whether it's the state government or your local government, so that could be Wheeling, that could actually be your school district, the information they have is available to you as a member of the public. That you can request that information and receive it with some limitation. You know, if you ask us, my old school district for my student records, they don't have to give that to you. It wouldn't look pretty and you wouldn't want to see it anyway, but you know, your records as students are protected. And there are exceptions like that for things like security, for things like employee evaluations, things that you probably would expect that have a little bit more of a privacy interest. If you ever want to get information like that, all you have to do is submit a written request to the government body that you need that information from. The next law that we deal with a lot is the Open Meetings Act. And that's a law in Illinois that says every meeting of a public body, so again, whether your village, your school district, your township, that all those meetings have to be open to the public, that they have to inform you about what's going to take place at those meetings, and that you also have the right to speak at those meetings. So, you know, if you have an issue in your local government, if you have something that you want changed, if you just want to inform your elected officials about some issue in the community, you have the right to go to the meeting and speak about it. And there are some limitations on that in terms of time, but generally you can inform your elected officials about whatever it is that you want them to know. That gets to that last point I talked about, the First Amendment, and specifically free speech. You know, you guys as students are supposed to have all of your constitutional rights at school. Now, there's a little bit of limitation on that. And this all dates back to a case in the late 1960s called Tinker versus Des Moines. And what happened was, in the late 60s, as you probably know, the Vietnam War was going on. There was a lot of protest back at home. And some students at Des Moines High School decided to wear black armbands to protest the war. Their school kicked them out. They said, you can't come back here until you take those armbands off. The students sued. The Supreme Court said that those students' rights do not end at the schoolhouse gate when they come to school. I don't think schoolhouses have gates anymore, but regardless. So they do have those First Amendment rights when they come to school. That said, it's not an unlimited thing. The school obviously can place restrictions on you. I know that, I think it was Mr. Cook said that you can't, or he asked you not to cheer wildly like this is a rally. You can if you want to, while I'm speaking anyway. But you know, that's the type of restriction that the school can put on you. It's called a time, place, or manner restriction. So, for instance, during lunch, you might not have much restriction on that. You might be able to talk to your friends about what you want to. Whereas in class, you really aren't allowed to speak unless it's your turn to speak. So for instance, if it's an issue you really care about, it can be politics, the elections coming up, or one for me personally, I'm a dog person, and I think that cats should be taxed and dog food should be free. So if I talk to my friends about that at lunch, the school really can't stop me. I might end up eating alone, but the school can't stop me. On the other hand, if I talk about that in the middle of math class, that's going to be a problem. I'm probably going to end up getting kicked out and disciplined for that. There are also limitations in terms of speech that is just sort of out of bounds. And the premise is that you can't regulate the content of speech as a school, as a government body, but there are limitations on that. For instance, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater if there is not in fact a fire. You can get in trouble for that under a number of laws, like disorderly conduct and different things, because you are creating a dangerous situation and the law can restrict that. So for instance, in schools, that might mean that you are restricted from swearing, from obscenity. There's a case, I think, from the 90s where a student, actually at an assembly a lot like this. It was on elections, but the stakes were much higher. It was for class president. And one of the candidate's friends gave a very lewd speech, and the school disciplined him, and there was a court case over it, and the Supreme Court said, actually, yeah, you can restrict that speech. It's a school. The school has an interest in maintaining a safe learning environment for the students. There was another one, a really famous case where there was a rally outside the school and a student held a sign that said, "Bong hits for Jesus." I still haven't figured out exactly what that means, but again, the court said, you're not in fact allowed to hold that sign if the school has written a rule that says you can. So those are the main laws we deal with. So we often have people coming to us because they feel that their rights have been infringed upon under those. And we can help them address a government body, try and figure out why their rights are being infringed, hopefully reach a solution. We often people come to us before they see those restrictions and ask us, what their rights are so that they can be informed when they do go somewhere, go to a public meeting or try to get information. So at this point I want to see if anyone has any questions. No? Okay, so quick story. So there's a new law in Illinois on student press rights, your newspaper. And what happened is there is, again, a Supreme Court case that says that in the school newspaper, whether it's here in Wheeling or anywhere else, the school has a right to review what's in that paper, and you don't have your full First Amendment rights. That's a national court case that said that. Illinois lawmakers didn't like that. They thought you should have your full First Amendment rights or close to them when you are writing in a student newspaper. So they wrote a law that said we would go back to the previous standard before that court case that said students have a right to edit, review their own paper, and unless it's something that would really be out of bounds, endanger the school environment, or say Bong hits for Jesus or something, they could put that in paper. So a school near here was in Evanston. Some students on the paper did a long investigation on marijuana use in the school. They interviewed students. They did a survey of use and what was going on. And this was really meant to be an informational spread about an issue that was going on in their high school. And before that went to print, the school pulled the paper and would not allow them to print that. These students approached us. We thought that clearly violated this new law on student press. My boss, Miriam, who I am not, went to the meeting of the school board, the next meeting, and told them that she thought that this paper should be published, that under this law, the school could be sued under this. And what happened is the school negotiated with the students, and eventually that paper was released. So that's the type of issue we might deal with in a school. And with that, unless there are any other questions, I want to turn it over, I think, I speak next. Thank you.